Commander, did you order something from Earth?
Yeah, I did. I bought a Steam Deck.
How'd you get a Steam Deck?
Oh, I ordered it off of Steam, like everyone else.
No. How are you getting it here?
Well, what I did was I strapped it to a rocket ship and I fired it at the ship.
Is that a good idea?
No, but it's a fun one.
Delivery is here.
I better go and get my parcel. Thanks, Evelyn. To state the obvious, this video is not sponsored by Valve, though I wish I was, because I'm very excited to talk good things about my experience with the Steam Deck. It's one of the most exciting pieces of tech I've gotten since the Oculus Rift, which is amazing, but I also hate what Facebook is doing to it. No, sorry, Meta. Our wannabe corporate overlords trying to force us into the world of Ready Player One. They've rebranded themselves, trying to build a dystopian holodeck that's like the world of VR chat with all the fun stripped out of it. And that movie was hack, and I don't want to live in that dystopian future hellhole. Thankfully, the non-dystopian Steam Deck fits very comfortably into something I needed in my life. Being a visual effects student, my computer has taken up much of my life. It's my entertainment, it's my work, and my source of income. But since I moved to university, a problem has arisen that whenever I go home to visit my parents, I'm left with nothing to do. Without my computer, I can't get any work done, I can't be productive, or even play any games, other than what my smartphone can run. Surprisingly, it can run Alien Isolation. Honestly, Alien Isolation can probably work on anything right now. It can run a cheesecake. Wait, 1 second. Loading up the booting screen, and there we go. But there's only so much Alien Isolation I can play, and FTL, before I start going insane and I start murdering other human beings around me. Huh? To try and expand my options, 7 months ago I got myself a Switch on sale. While it preoccupied me with some games that I love from my childhood, as well as others, it eventually fell out of favour when I had played all the games that I had and I couldn't get any more because of how expensive they were on the Nintendo store. That, and there's simply a lot of games the Nintendo Switch simply can't run, otherwise it would spontaneously combust. I reserved my Steam Deck before I got my Switch, and it's interesting to compare the two devices, even if they're made several years apart. The Switch was made in 2017, and the Steam Deck is in 2021. For a start, the Nintendo Switch is a lot less ergonomic. It's very simple, and you can play with it without any issues, but it's not that comfortable to hold in your hands. Though I will note that I have big hands, so it might be a lot more comfortable people than smaller hands than me. In comparison, the Steam Deck is incredibly comfortable in my hands, it fits in them perfectly, and the device is lighter than expected, only about 669 grams. The Switch tends to last a lot longer on battery life. The Steam Deck battery only lasts around an hour and a half to 3 hours, highly dependent on what game you're playing and how graphically intensive it is. God of War lasts about 90 minutes, but you can extend the battery life by lowering the frame rate of your games and decreasing the resolution. If you're looking for it being more portable and on the go, you might want to invest in a decent portable battery, but if you're going to be close to a wall socket, you'll be fine for a wall charger. On the Switch, while taking out the Joy-Con is an interesting novelty, I don't think I've ever played games or ever actually used them, other than playing Overcooked with my friend at a party. The trackpad on the Steam Deck isn't as good as the joysticks for games, however, it works surprisingly well on typing on a keyboard and using it as a mouse. This is very useful in desktop mode, or even using it in the middle of a game to click on menus. While playing on the Steam Deck, I kept going back to the Switch for comparison, and it feels really small now, and the graphic the Switch can handle really aren't that great. I will say that the Switch's size and battery life means it's much more easier to take in my coat and play on the go in everyday situations. Say if I'm on the train and I'm not intending to play games, I can just whip it out. The Steam Deck's size means that it's much more of a chore to carry around. You can't conceal this thing in a pocket like you can a Switch, and it would require a bag to put the case into. I would only take my Steam Deck if I was going somewhere where I was intending to do some gaming. Say if I was going on a holiday, if I could afford a holiday, or like I said in the beginning, going to my parents' house. The Switch, while cheaper, is only around 80 quid cheaper than the cheapest version of the Steam Deck, which is about 349 quid. Or what I like to call real money. In Monopoly money, it's 399 US dollars. Because I'm a mad lad, I own the 569 quid, 512GB version of the Steam Deck. And for the love of the god, do not tell my parents, they will kill me. This is not what my student loans are supposed to be buying. While the Steam Deck is more expensive, it gives you far more options in what you can play, with the added bonus of the ones that you already own on Steam. The other advantage of Steam is that it has much more on sale than the Nintendo Store will. Or the games will just be a much more reasonably charged price because Nintendo charge 50 quid for almost every other game and rarely has any sales in anything I actually want to buy. Another thing you can do is that you can buy CD keys, not something that a lot of people like because it's quite dodgy sometimes, but it's still an option for much cheaper games. You know, I'm a student, I don't judge. I will say that anything that you want to buy in the Nintendo Store will be designed to work on the Switch. Some games, especially older ports like Knights of the Old Republic, do not play as easily on the Steam Deck as they do on the Switch, or even the iPad, because the controls are released specifically to be optimized for those consoles. The Steam version was optimized for PC controls, and the Steam Deck does not have PC controls, it's a controller. So while I can play Knights of the Old Republic on the Steam Deck, it's not as smooth as it would be on an iPad or a Switch. However, the massive advantage with the Steam Deck is that thanks to the Steam controller support, you can customize your controller layout if you're unhappy with it, or even use a custom control scheme someone else in the community has created. Steam even has their own set of templates which are designed to work on a wide arrangement of games, especially things like first-person shooters. The Steam Deck is far more powerful in its graphics and will give you a greater range of utility, especially with its Linux desktop mode. You can install Discord and other computer software and use this thing on the go like a laptop. I did try to install Maya just for fun to see if I could even render anything. However, I've got no idea how to use Linux, so I was a little lost on this front. The lowest priced Steam Deck only has about 64GB of storage, which I do not recommend. 64GB of storage is not much considering the size of modern PC games. The other issue is that it has incredibly slow transfer speeds. The Steam Deck offers external storage in the form of a micro SD card slot. However, buying a decent micro SD card with a decent transfer speed can run you up to 100 quid. So for that price, you may as well buy the 256GB Steam Deck. The only reason I can see anyone using the 64GB Steam Deck is if you're planning on replacing the storage with a better SSD. However, it's incredibly risky and difficult, especially compared to replacing parts in laptops and computers. Valve does not recommend replacing any of the parts in the device, even though it is still an option. If you're not intending to upgrade it, the only use I can really see for the 64GB Steam Deck is if you're deciding between this and a Nintendo Switch, and you're only intending to play games that are under 10GB. Because if you're comparing the price and hardware with the 64GB and the Nintendo Switch, the cheapest Steam Deck wins out flat. But if you're going to put that kind of money down, you may as well go all in. If you're getting the Steam Deck, you're probably looking at playing much heavier modern PC games, where it'll require faster transfer rates and higher amounts of storage. The 256GB Steam Deck has faster and bigger storage and comes with a carrying case. It is much better worth for your money than the 64GB version of the Steam Deck, and it's only about 110 quid more expensive, which is cheaper than it would be to upgrade your Steam Deck storage. This version I would probably recommend to most people as it has a much more decent sized storage space, and you can have a handful of games and have a really good experience. The carrying case is very useful for taking it out and about. It's best not to leave this thing unprotected in your bag next to your car keys or whatever else is down there. The 512GB Steam Deck is about 569 quid, which is expensive. However, if you compare that to most PC gaming setups, it's very cheap. Even comparing the 512GB version with other handheld gaming devices, such as the One X Player and the AO Neo Founder, which are about $1,000 and $789 respectively, are much more expensive compared to the $649 of the 512GB Steam Deck. It comes with faster and bigger storage, anti-glare glass and exclusive carrying case, and I think the glass cover is very nice because I've been told the cheaper version can be much more difficult to play outdoors with strong reflections onto the screen. The storage space you will need is very dependent on what you intend to be playing. A lot of newer games can range from 60GB to 100GB, so keep that in mind. With 500GB I usually find that I can store around 9 to 11 games at once, with a mix of games that are about 60GB and 100GB, with a few older games that are less, with about 10GB. So if you're not worried about the screen and you're on a budget, I would recommend the 256GB version. Just make sure that you get a decent amount of microSD card storage with a very good transfer rate. But if you're not worried about pricing and you can afford the more expensive 512GB version, then I would recommend that in a heartbeat. Looking at the hardware settings, all Steam Decks have around 16GB of RAM and have an AMD processor and graphics card, and I will be honest, I'll put the specifics up here, because I don't know what the hell any of this means. If any of you know what this means, well, now you know. All I can say is that it does graphics good, and I haven't found a game that it can't handle. The display is 7 inches with a 1280x800 resolution touchscreen. It does have a USB-C with DisplayPort and can handle up to 8K resolution if you hook this thing up to a TV. Though I've never tested it, it is technically possible. I will point out that playing games at much higher resolution will probably be beyond what the Steam Deck can handle. There is a dock which you can buy separately, which can make it much easier to connect to your PC, and you can plug this thing in with a mouse and keyboard. To test the speakers on this thing, I easily installed Spotify and I listened to some music, and the sound quality is pretty good to my ears. The touchscreen could be better. I don't really use it that much, but when I have to use it because the game doesn't support certain controls, you have to touch the very small icons, and again, big hands. It could really use having something like a stylus for greater accuracy, something like what the DS has. One of the downsides of buying a Steam Deck is that there is a bit of a waiting list. You put down a £4 reservation, and when one is available in your region you will be notified, and you'll have up to 2 days to purchase, otherwise you will lose your reservation. The notification comes up next time you open Steam, and you can't really miss it. So onto the games. There are some games in which the Steam Deck cannot play, at least without tweaking. Fully supported games play like a dream with very few issues, and games like these are such as Alien Isolation, Batman Arkham City, Crash Bandicoot, Doom, Hitman 3, Half-Life 2, Portal, Shadow of Mordor, Mortal Kombat X, No Man's Sky, Soma, Rocket League, God of War, Resident Evil 2, Prey, Battle Block Theatre, Spyro, War Thunder, Witcher 3 and many more. And it's easy to tell what games are fully supported because they'll have this handy little tick which will tell you. However, if the game is not recommended, it's a bit up into the air if it will work. Some games work perfectly with no changes, and some games will require minor changes to get it to function properly. With no or little alterations, I've managed to play Mass Effect Legendary Edition, Transformers Fall of Cybertron, Battlefront 2, Fallout 4, Clone Commando, Knights of the Old Republic, Arkham Knight, Imperium, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Counter-Strike Source, Borderlands, and LEGO Star Wars The Clone Wars, all running without any issues and no issues with the controls. Only 1 or 2 needed slight tweaks to get them to work properly. I will say about 80% of my Steam games will work completely or are workably compatible with the Steam Deck. About 10% of those have controller issues like Hearts of Iron and XCOM 2, but these are issues which you can work around and eventually fix if you're bothered to work them out. And 10% of the games straight up will not run. I did actually struggle to find games that I played that simply did not want to work with the Steam Deck. I was going through all of my 365 games in my Steam library just to find the few that couldn't. I even went to older games, like ones from 2005, because most will at least boot up the menu screen. After that, the only issues are ones that occasionally pop up, like controller issues, if anything. Well, except for anything with Easy Anti-Cheat installed. Originally, anything with Easy Anti-Cheat was a no-go and not compatible with the Steam Deck. Since launch, there has been an update to fix Easy Anti-Cheat, which means that it's easy for game developers to make it compatible. However, some games have not updated their Easy Anti-Cheat and not made it compatible with the Steam Deck. An example of this is Imperium Galactic Survival, which plays fine as long as you don't enable the Easy Anti-Cheat. I did try this and tried to connect to a multiplayer server, but it straight up refused to start. If you want to play Imperium on a multiplayer server, you will need to disable Easy Anti-Cheat on that server. Halo Infinite, Master Chief Collection, and Destiny 2 are others that simply won't launch, and Bungie have threatened to ban anyone who tries to get around this issue. I'm told this is because it runs on a Linux device. It's a bit of a shame since those were some of the games that I was planning to play on this device. There are games with Easy Anti-Cheat that still work, such as Dread Hunger. However, I didn't put down Dread Hunger as one of the games which work, because I can't actually click on anything on menu screens. I did eventually get past this, only for maximum graphics PC settings to be applied to my Steam Deck, and I couldn't change it, because I couldn't click on any menus. But here is a list of bugs which I've encountered with the Steam Deck. I had an issue playing Arkham City, a supported game, and the screen for some reason just went black and refused to respond. I was told this was an issue with the Steam Deck July update, and it eventually fixed itself and never happened again. Arkham City also crashed once during gameplay, but I haven't encountered it again after 50 minutes of playing. I feel like noting the only game experience that ever crashed on me on a Switch was Subnautica, and that was very annoying because of how much progress I would lose. And oh yeah, this happened to both of them, and the developers seem to know about these issues, but haven't gotten around to fixing them. Yeah, third-party games on the Switch tend to have a lot of quality control issues. Some games need their settings fiddled to make it launch. For example, sometimes you have to set the games to Windows mode, and this is one of the more common problems, which is very easily fixed in about 5 seconds and it needs about 2 clicks. I only experienced it about 3 times on games that I tried to play on the Steam Deck. Mass Effect Legendary Edition required me to install Origin just to play the game. It's easy and it's not Valve's fault. I just hate that EA was forcing me to install Origin onto my Steam device. Of course, issues like games on Easy Anti-Cheat not booting up, I already mentioned that. Sometimes when you close a game in the Steam menu, it can still run in the background, and I experienced that once while playing I Am Bread, where the game kept running in the background and it just kept playing the theme. Some games have control issues, like I had this problem with XCOM 2 and Black Mesa, games which have controller support but for some reason have issues with the Steam Deck, and this is very common with strategy games. For instance, I can technically play Hearts of Iron 4, but because there's no scroll functionality, it's very difficult. These games you can probably make work seamlessly, but you need to play around with the controls to tidy it up. Most games that have controller support, you'll often be fine. Tomb Raider Reboot runs smoothly but occasionally freezes for no reason, and it crashed early on into the game and I'm not entirely sure why. I wasn't able to fix it, but there probably is a way. Rise of the Tomb Raider for some reason played much better and much smoother without crashing once. And yeah, that's the extent of my issues playing a ton of different games. Most games run perfectly fine with no issue. Obviously Portal 2 and Half-Life run amazingly, but they're very old games and Valve would have made sure that these things are completely compatible with their hardware. Mass Effect Legendary Edition played like a treat with a few minor frame rate jitters on the first level. Fall of Cybertron played surprisingly fantastically for a game that hasn't been available for years at this point. It was definitely a surprise. I really did think that I would need to create a custom control template just for the game, but it turns out that it works fine straight out of the box. War for Cybertron did need some fiddling around to play correctly though, but after that there was no issues. Battlefront 2005, I had no issues. I just had to use the community control layout and it played just like the original Xbox. which was quite nostalgic. Clone Commando I had no issues with playing the first few levels. KOTOR played completely fine, and like I mentioned, not as smooth with the controls as iPad or the Switch port, but it is still completely playable. When I finally got it working, Imperium played fine, Fallout 4 worked, and it was a bit of a faff. I couldn't start the game because for whatever reason, the keyboard didn't want to appear, and I pressed the command, nothing happened, and I couldn't enter my name. I edited one of my controls to L, and just kind of left that as my name. And the game didn't have any issues. I got to Diamond City, avoiding Preston Harvey like the plague, and it seemed to play pretty fine. Hitman 3 worked fine, usually staying at around 40 to 50 frames a second, without any issues. I did have an issue with the first of the Hitman reboot games. It didn't understand my controller inputs, which is strange because the game claims to be compatible with the Steam Deck. I did go to look up this problem, but I was met by a ton of people who claim that the game worked completely fine for them, so I don't know what's happening there. Witcher 3 only had a slight problem with the resolution where half the screen was off the screen. That was easily fixed in the settings. Witcher 3 on Steam Deck actually plays effortlessly and looks gorgeous. The frame rate would normally move around 40 frames a second to 60 frames a second depending on the intensity of what it's trying to do. No crashes, no glitches or problems in sight, didn't even freeze. Comparing that to the Switch version of Witcher 3, which was throttled harder than a Twitter mob cancelling someone for a milquetoast opinion, and it still doesn't play smooth at 30 frames at all. I think that it says a lot of the power between the Switch and the Steam Deck, that the Steam Deck can play effortlessly what the Switch will struggle to do. Obviously, older games like Batman Arkham City play at a smooth 60 frames a second. To be honest, I found it difficult to truly test the limits of what the Steam Deck was capable of, because I don't own that many current gen games. Most of the older games I had ran on decent graphics, but nothing that seemed to push the limitations of what the Steam Deck was capable of. The newest game that I own is Hitman 3. So I decided to buy God of War, and that was a bit more of a struggle for the Steam Deck. God of War plays completely fine, other than a few moments in which the game will freeze. At first, the Steam Deck struggled on the default settings. There were a lot of artifacts in the focus and motion blur, and I could feel the Steam Deck heating up quite a bit. However, I fixed the motion blur by turning it down in the game settings, and it managed to run at a steady 60 frames a second with only a handful of frame drops. I was however nervous to put it above the original PlayStation graphics, and I was worried that might have been pushing the Steam Deck a little too far. I think in terms of future and next generation games, the Steam Deck will be able to play them, but I don't think that it will be able to play them at their full graphical potential. God of War played great on the Steam Deck, and I kind of got sucked into the story, and I admit it's the reason why this video is a little late. If you're looking into the Steam Deck and you can afford it, I highly recommend this console, especially when comparing it to other hardware and the insane amount of games that you can play from the Steam store and that you already have in your Steam library. Plus, the amazing utility and the freedom this device offers, especially compared to others. With an Xbox or PlayStation, you can't use them like a normal computer. With this, you can. And with that freedom, it brings a lot more things you can do. Some people have even managed to install Windows on this device. And I've even looked up, there are people who have managed to install Maya onto the Steam Deck, which is rather funny. Someone show me an Xbox that can do that. If you're looking at getting started in gaming, the Steam Deck also offers a very cheap entry into the PC gaming experience. Because when you compare the price of a Steam Deck to a gaming computer, it's easily about a half or a quarter of the price, depending on what PCs you're looking at. So I heavily recommend this device, and if you have reserved one, you shouldn't have any hesitations about fulfilling your purchase on Steam. Anyway, if you're interested in following me outside of my YouTube, my Twitter and Discord are in the description. If you want to support my hard work, you can support my channel through Patreon, and I also have a subscribe star. Until the next time, thank you all for watching. This has been Commander Shiney of the Alliance Navy Vessel Intervention, signing off.